Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. And I have a very special place in my heart for my guest today. Julie Giese has been special to me since she was the leader out at Phoenix. I met her when she was out there, and I would see her every year. That's the track, Julie, that I've been to more than any other track because my two daughters live in the Phoenix area. So, and plus two races a year, that was two good excuses to
Mhm.
go visit those grandbabies. So, been to that track more than any track and got acquainted with you and made friends with you and Shelly and so we've continued that friendship. I hope you feel that way anyway. And now you're in Chicago, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Kalamazoo. And so I'm glad we could have you on the show today. Would you first start, though, by just telling us a little bit about yourself in case people need to get reacquainted with you?
Absolutely. Well, first, Melinda, thank you for having me. It is good to see you as well. I do miss seeing you all the time at the races in Phoenix, but glad we were able to connect and just glad to be able to chat with you today. I mean, my background, I grew up on a dairy farm, so my family are actually my brother is still on that dairy farm in Wisconsin, and I went to school for agriculture. So I am putting that degree to great use in my current role. But I've been in motorsports. This is actually my 25th season with NASCAR, which is
Wow.
so hard to believe. That time just goes by so fast. I started in upstate New York at Watkins Glen International, one of my favorite places, and spent several years there before moving to Daytona and spent 14 years in Daytona Beach working at the racetrack as their VP of marketing and also on the renovation for Daytona Rising that led into a job with our construction team for a couple of years. And that's actually what led me to Phoenix. So I worked on the construction team as we were renovating Phoenix Raceway, got to know the team out there and got to really reimagine that venue. And it's so fun to see what it's become today
Mhm.
and what it's become over the years. So I had the opportunity in 2018, I guess it was, to take the leadership role out at Phoenix Raceway. My first role as a track president. Really thought I'd probably finish my career in Phoenix Raceway. Out there is just beautiful, but we started working on this neat little project in downtown Chicago that's close to home, and the more I learned about it, the more I was like, this is something that I felt like really suited me and it got me closer to home. So I moved to Chicago 3 years ago now, and it's hard to believe it's already been 3 years. But yeah, I've been living in downtown Chicago, enjoying everything that this great city has to offer, and running the street race every July.
Yeah, and we're going to talk probably quite a bit about that street race, but it hasn't been easy.
No, no. I mean, anytime you do something that has never been done in the history of our sport, which every time I say that, it just still like makes me really like take a step back and think first how grateful I am for the opportunity and how humbling that is. Like, I mean, this is a sport that's now what 76 years old
Yeah.
and or 77 years old, I guess this year. Like and to be part of something that has never been done before,
Yeah.
that's incredibly special. And anytime you're doing things like that and it changes difficult. It's a process, and doing it in downtown Chicago definitely added a different layer. But the city's been tremendous. We've learned so much, and it's been just a really great platform to showcase what a sports team or a sports entity and a city can do together to showcase both how great the city is and how great our sport is.
Yeah, and it's not your typical out at Chicagoland Speedway, okay, in
Mhm.
Joliet. I mean, that's like going to Michigan or wherever. You had to start really from scratch because you had to plan the route and figure out how to keep everybody safe and what streets are you going to close, which I'm sure was a huge deal. Like I was telling you before we started, my cousins live in a condo downtown and they didn't even know what was happening until I told them. And the people that live down there probably weren't 100% excited, but I'll bet after they saw those cars running around their buildings, they got more excited.
Yeah, they did. And, I think that's the thing that's been really one of the most rewarding parts about the role is to see how everything has evolved over the first, now going into our third year. That first year, again, lots of questions, lots of uncertainty, which I completely understand. Again, there was no proof of concept. Like, this had never been done before. I was explaining what to expect based on a computer model, asking people to trust me. It was going to be okay. And I understand that those conversations that we had with residents and businesses. I had over 150 meetings that first year leading into the race weekend, just to understand what those questions were. Because if I didn't know the questions, I can't help. I can't provide answers. I can't adjust our plans if there's opportunities to do that. And so those conversations, and I'm super grateful to the residents and the community members, the businesses, for having those conversations and explaining it and working with us on it, because it really does take everyone. And that first year, questions about this, you talked about the safety and what that means, where just helping everyone understand that we bring in barriers and fencing. There's over 2,000 barriers, each weigh 10,000 pounds. There's an 8-foot fence on top of that. That we're going to do this in the right way, that safety and security of everyone in the footprint and around the footprint is our priority. Working closely with Chicago Police Department, Chicago Fire Department, the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, and so many other city services to bring this event to life. It's been definitely a learning process, but it truly was a blank sheet of paper. And while we had a general plan, like, it was really created with so many individuals, not just the team on NASCAR that was working on Chicago, the great team we have here in Chicago, but it was really our community partners. It was everyone around the city leaning in, providing feedback, offering support, that made that first year such a success.
Yeah, and it seems like if it could go wrong, it did, as far as the weather, and and those are things out of your control. And so the fact that you obviously had a lot of things in your control that you were able to manage and change and do, um, made it a success in spite of that drenching downpour and basically 100-year rain and flood in Chicago.
Yeah, 9 inches of rain on race day. I mean, you just can't even make that up.
No.
And yes, there were times during that day where we were just like, I don't know if we're going to be able to get this in. And
Yeah.
that is really where that partnership with the city of Chicago became so critical, because obviously there were all the contingency plans. You do a lot of the what ifs leading into it, the tabletops, the planning, plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? And a lot of those things were coming into play. But that partnership with the city, once the rain stopped, to get the streets cleared,
Mm-hmm.
with whether it was the water management, streets and sands, like, so many people, again, this is where they excel. This is what they
Right.
do every day. And this is what I appreciate so much about the team at the city of Chicago. Like, they know how to do big events. Like, there's nothing that they haven't walked through, worked through. And so we really, worked closely with them to be able to bring that event and get those race cars on the track. I remember watching interviews after, and drivers were like, "We're doing what? We're going racing? Okay." And then the racing was phenomenal.
It
And
was
so at that point,
amazing.
then everyone's tuning in and they're watching this amazing race.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Van Gisbergen,
Yeah.
who has, like, put on a clinic in the rain. And the best part about it was, and I've heard this from so many people, is that night, the time, like, we were starting to run out of daylight and the sun was setting, and that sunset was the most beautiful sunset
Mm-hmm.
over the skyline that year. And it made this city look so beautiful. And
Yeah.
that is the one common thing that I have heard from Chicagoans, whether they attended, whether they watched, whether they were supportive or not, they were opportunity to do. And I love, like, looking back on that. Despite everything we had thrown at us, it was the most watched race since 2017 on
Yeah.
NBC. We surpassed our economic impact
Mm-hmm.
projections. The media value was over 24 million. I mean, just all the deliverables in spite of 9 inches of rain.
Right. Right. And that sun, when that sun came out, it was almost like job well done. It was kind of like, the
Yeah.
icing on the cake in a way that you had persevered through so many things. You, your team, the city of Chicago, all their people, and then the sun is there, and it's like, yeah, job well done. And that's just kind of gets you right here, doesn't it?
It does. And it's funny because we talked so much leading into that race. And it's something that I actually have a post-it note on my screen, just reminding myself to worry about the things that I can control and control the things that I worry about. I can't control the weather, but I can control how we respond to it. And I
Yeah.
think having that perspective. But I remember that night at the end of the race, those last 10 laps where SVG was coming through the field, and like I was standing where the victory lane area was, and we had fans on both sides of the course. And every time those cars came by, man, they were cheering. It was this amazing like stadium feel where the fans were just electric. And when the checker flag flew, it was just this moment of, okay, we did it. And to see the elation on the race team, to see the fans on both sides, just absolutely, like, no one left. And it's funny, one of a media person said to me, this was the first time after a rain delay that they saw people leaving and they were dancing. Like, people were just, it was like, despite what we had all just gone through,
Hmm.
it was a pretty remarkable way to end the weekend.
Yeah, it really was. And from I was watching it on television, and all those people with their rain gear, and they were standing in the rain, and it was like nothing was going to make them leave. They're like, I bought my ticket. I don't care. I want to see this race. I'm staying. And you
Exactly.
don't see that at many tracks.
No, and the other beauty of that was we're right downtown. So while you're
Uh-huh.
waiting out the rain delay, so many of our fans went over to the restaurants, to
Yeah,
like the attractions. Like, were spent they had things to do. They
right.
weren't hanging out waiting. They were 5 minutes away from the course, and so that was another benefit that I heard from those fans afterwards, that were like, "Hey, I just went and hung out
Hmm.
at the local restaurant.
Yeah,
We had some drinks. It was great. And then when we heard the cars were going to go on track, we just walked right back over."
exactly. Yeah, not like the year that I sat under the bleachers in Phoenix when there was a rain delay, and it was cold, and I had to go buy a sweatshirt, and it was like, this is Phoenix, what's
I know,
happening?
a rain delay in Phoenix. There was something wrong with that.
And it was cold. It was like, what the heck's happening here? But anyway, yeah, so you just never know. You have to be prepared when you go to the
Mhm.
racetrack. I don't care where you're going, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.